This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Welcome to this week's edition of Gary Talks Business Bytes, and I'm delighted to be joined online by Daniel Tolson, who really focuses and helps people on becoming a better leader. He's an author of 8 books. He has a Guinness record. He has done 10,000 scientific insights into emotional intelligence. He's done numerous case studies. He's worked with massive businesses. He's helped businesses pump millions into their bank accounts. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today online.
Mate, g'day. Great to see you there, and I wish I could claim that Guinness World Record. That one belongs to my customer. I can claim that I'm the Australian champion.
You're in great shape for those who are watching the video version of this podcast. And, you know, they all say it's so important to be healthy, you know, be as athletic as one can. But for someone who's really on the ground working with, you know, thousands of leaders every year, is it clear as daylight to you that those who are really healthy and fit are better leaders than those who might be unhealthy, you know, obese even? Yeah. Or is that just wishful thinking that if you're really healthy, you'll be a great leader? Like, have you seen great leaders who would not necessarily be in the best of health?
I've never seen an obese leader who's succeeded long term. I've never seen a heavy smoker or a heavy drinker succeed long term. And when you're obese, when you drink, when you smoke, it impacts your sleep. And when your sleep's impacted, you can't function correctly. You can't make the right decisions. And if you look at people like Jeff Bezos, he's super fit in his 50s or 60s. He also expects the same level of fitness from his executives, but he also expects that they have really good sleep hygiene. And what he says is he wants all of his leaders to sleep for a minimum of 8 hours a night. And the reason is that they have to make decisions about that business for the quarter that they're going to operate in a decade from now. And it takes so much energy, physical energy, to think. I was told by one of my clients recently, he leads a team of 175 people. He said that a grand chess master burns through 6,000 calories a day.
Wow.
When they're playing chess. I do 10,000 to 12,000 steps a day, and I'm lucky to burn 800 calories. But they're burning 6,000 sitting there only using brain power. So in the early days, you can get away with it. But as you get older, if you're sleep deprived, your body doesn't release melatonin and it doesn't release serotonin. So you have poor sleep, then you have poor emotional regulation. You have poor emotional regulation and you make bad decisions, and it repeats. So every leader who I work with who's getting into their 40s and 50s, all of them have a goal for better health. And if they just get that health component right, the business follows. But I've never seen it the other way around.
Well, that leads us nicely into talking about emotional intelligence, because that's so important in today's world to be successful as a leader. Can you break down for us what is emotional intelligence for a leader?
I'll give you the easy version. My mum and dad, they owned a pawnbroking business. And so I
Pawnbroking.
Pawnbroking. I happily say that my mum was in pawn.
I wasn't sure if you said porn.
I was. Well, both our family were the local porn stars. And you've seen the show in America. And that's what we did. And if we think about emotional intelligence in terms of just being street smart, that's what it is. And my grandfather, he was a gambler. And he would always say, never gamble against the house. The house always wins. So in emotional intelligence, the first part is self-awareness. You've got to know who you are. You've got to know your strengths. You've got to know your potential limitations. Because in business, sometimes people just go too deep too soon. And it's because they don't understand their risk tolerance. Secondly, in emotional intelligence, we have what's called self-regulation. And that's the ability to get yourself out of any mental or emotional rut that you get in. And if you're starting a business and you're prospecting, you're presenting, you're selling, and you're following up, 95% of your life is going to be about experiencing rejection. Because most people don't say yes to your offer. Most people are going to say no to your offer. But you can't lose enthusiasm. You can't lose hope. You can't lose your optimism along the way. So you've got to be able to get out of that mental rut. And then thirdly, you've got to have motivation. And unfortunately, for most businesses, they fail in the first 2 years. And you've got to understand that you've got to have that level of motivation to get past the first 2 years. In the first 4 years, you'll make a little bit of money, you'll pay back all your debtors. And most businesses historically do not turn a profit until 7 years. And if you run out of energy, if you run out of motivation before the 7 years, you'll never cross that line where all the magic happens. The fourth pillar of emotional intelligence is social awareness. It's looking across at you and it's looking across at your customers, it's looking across at your team members, and it's having empathy. And empathy is about understanding their emotional makeup. Why do you think and feel the way that you do? And if we can see everybody as different, not the same, we're going to be a lot better. I used to co-lead a team of 17,500 cabin crew. Every day I'd get 17 new cabin crew. You couldn't use a one-size-fits-all approach with 17,500 people. People were crying out saying, I want people to know my name. My staff number was 394,887. I was staff number 40,000. And I got it. I'm Daniel. Don't call me my staff number. And so we've got to give people individualized service. We have to become an attraction business. And we attract them emotionally. And then fifthly is what we call social regulation. And social regulation is about influence and persuasion. You've got to influence your customers to put their hand in the pocket and take out the money or the credit card. And if you can't make a sale, business fails. You've also got to influence and persuade top talent to come and work with you. You can't let the top talent and go and work for your competitor. And so they're the 5 key pillars of emotional intelligence. They have nothing to do with your IQ. And yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks because it's been proven that you can gain emotional intelligence over the years. And if we just come back to being street smart, that's what it is, being street smart.
Well, there's so many great points you hit on there. And one of them, I think, which we can dive a little deeper into, because it's very relevant, I think, for the younger generation today as well, is you said it could be, 7.5 years or so till a business starts making a profit. Yep. And, there's a lot of discussion at the moment where young people go on TikTok or YouTube and they're seeing these people getting into their private jets and, wearing the Rolex watches and getting in the Lamborghinis, and they're talking about their wealth and how easy it is to make money online and da-da-da-da. And they're saying now through case studies that they've done is people actually feel worse about themselves watching this content online because they feel there's a much bigger gap than ever before between where they are and where these people are apparently in the world and what they aspire to be. And it's so important that when you go into business that you're not doing it for the money, because after 2 years, your motivation will be gone, that it's really down to your core value of your passion, your real inner drive for doing it. Because, you've probably seen it yourself as well over the years of people who come up with a concept and it's nearly like a get rich quick scheme for them. They think, everyone will be bowled over and want to do this and buy this. And when it doesn't start going that way for them, instead of tweaking and improving, they just drop everything and walk away.
We don't live in the 70s, we don't live in the 80s, and we don't live in the 90s. Pre-2000s, people didn't have the access to the information that we have today. And we can see it taking place in real time during the American elections. They're fact-checking these politicians live, debating. I have sat in front of customers, like we're sitting together now, and they're fact-checking me whilst I'm talking to them.
Okay.
Now, at the start, you're like, oh my gosh, they don't trust me. They don't like me. It's not about that. Is that they've been ripped off in the past and they don't want to be ripped off again in the future. So
Yeah.
people have this level of knowledge that they have access to. But the problem with social media, we have information, we have disinformation, and we have misinformation. And we look at all these influencers who have got these Rolexes, who have got these nice cars, and we start to second guess ourselves because we think, what's wrong with me? Why can they have it and I can't? But from the work that I've done, I've had more than 25,000 leaders go through my programs. I can tell you, my leaders who have businesses that are doing $4 and $5 billion a year aren't driving cars like that. They're not wearing the Rolexes. They're not flying around in private jets. And they're the people who've got the big businesses. I have seen people lose almost everything going through COVID. They wear $25 shirts. They wear $100 jeans. And they say business will take everything from you. But they're the real deal. I've got a cousin, he employs 500 people. And I borrowed my friend's Omega watch. It was about $7,000. And I showed up to the office and I said, hey, how you going? And he looked at the watch and I said, what do you think of my watch? He said, nothing special. He just said, how are the profit margins in your business? And I said, well, I was expecting that. And I said, and it's not my watch. And he said, well, you shouldn't buy it until you can really afford it.
Yeah.
So we've got to be careful. The way that social media works is that people put posts online to inflate their ego, and it's called a highlight. They're just showing you a small portion of what's happening. But most of the time, it's a lie. One of my clients in Australia, he hires 250 private investigators in his firm. 250. And he talks about these influencers. He says, Daniel, in America, in places like California or Miami, you can go to an airport and you can hire a private jet to walk on and do photos on.
Okay.
You can pay like $50 to stand next to the Lamborghini. You can pay $50 to put the watch on, and they've got all the green screens there, and it's set up specifically. And it's a scam.
Wow.
So
That is mad.
don't be under the illusion that it's happening, because for the majority of people, it's not. My mentor and good friend, Brian Tracy, he said, Daniel, most business success comes down to the principle of the last man or woman standing. Most business success is just about you keeping your door open for one day longer than everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
And if you're that person, eventually you'll get all the customers.
yeah.
I've been there with my family. We had our pawnbroking business. We had competitors start up against us. They tried to undercut us. They tried to overpay. And all we could do was keep our doors open because we knew that they couldn't do that for more than a couple of years. And it wasn't until our 17th year in business that we saw our best profits. But by waiting that long, my parents have been retired, self-funded retirees for more than a decade. They'll never have to work this lifetime, probably not next lifetime. But they were just the last business standing.
Yeah.
And we've got to think like that. We have to think long-term
Yeah.
rather than short-term. It's proven that people who have a longer time perspective, where they look at their business and they see themselves operating in 30 and 40 and 50 years' time, they make better decisions. Because if you're just about the dollar today, you're going to rip everybody off. And once you burn the marketplace, you'll be kicked out of town. They'll drive you out of town.
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, there's this attitude of, come up with a business concept, grow it, and then after 10 years, flip it, and this aspiration of even moving to the Bahamas in their early 40s, early 50s. I don't know how long you can sit on the beach staring at the ocean before you get bored, but it's something I've learned, certainly over the last couple of years, is that attitude of longer term thinking. It makes the process more enjoyable. because it kind of just calms everything down, and then you're really thinking about growth and sustainability rather than just a shorter term thing, because once I get to there, I don't care anymore.
Yeah. One of my clients is a family business of my cousins, and I have been working on that farm since I was 14. I'm now 44, and I work with them as a consultant. And that's a 30-year journey. It's also a 4-generation business. And in my opinion, they're just getting going. They're just warming up. The best is yet to come. And they don't spend a lot of money on fancy things because they understand the marketplace. They understand that things like COVID, something like that, comes every couple of generations. See, I come from a family of farmers. My dad's one of 12 children. And my father would say to me, he would say, Daniel, on a farm, if you can just have one good year in 7, you will survive. If you can have 2 good years in 7, you'll set yourself up for a lifetime. And that's how our family think. They think in terms of seasons. They think in terms of having a good year and expecting some bad years. And that gives them an ability to be resilient. Also, one of the marks of very successful people is they're very frugal.
Yeah.
I know one gentleman, and he employs 300 people, and he said to me, if I can profit $1 in my business, I've got a profitable business. He says, if I can pay myself, pay all of my wages and have no debts and still make $1, I've got a successful business. And that's how he was thinking. Now, his business probably does maybe 500-600 million a year in turnover, and that's how he thinks. And that's what I believe is the real deal, is that these people, they're not all that flashy. They're not saying don't have those nice things, have them, but you've got to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford it, just don't buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't put yourself in debt just to impress other people who really don't care about you, to be honest.
No. The banks don't like me because I'm not in debt. And that's, some people say, well, you got to spend money to make money. Look, I don't want to wake up in the morning and think that 80% of my profit margins are going to be spent on interest only. I don't believe in that. I've been a money lender, and I understand that people get themselves into so much debt in business. They buy the car not because they can afford it, but they're trying to impress their competition. I used to work with a group of personal trainers, and they were taking steroids and doing testosterone and all these other wonderful things, not to impress the customer, but to impress their competitor. So we've got to be careful with influencers. We've got to be very careful.
Yeah, it's so true. Even you know, I have seen it with other businesses where they do get the fancy vehicles and pump a lot of money into that exterior look of the business, but they've put themselves in huge debt, but they're trying to create an impression for, you know, other businesses or other potential clients to see that, oh, we are a success. But if it doesn't work, it's a massive boo-boo to be making.
You know what I find hilarious, Gary, is a lot of guys who go to the gym and get themselves all buffed up, the only people who come and talk to them about their muscle shape is other men. Now, if that's what you're hoping for, good luck.
Yeah.
Like I've my body's relaxed a lot over the years, and my wife loves me the way I am. She's not asking me to have a six pack.
Yeah.
She's not asking me to be ripped and look like an X-Man. That's not what turns her on. What turns her on is me paying attention to her, understanding who she is, her needs, what's important to her, having a conversation. One thing that came out interesting, that was interesting recently, is that people actually spend more time brushing their teeth every day than they do in uninterrupted conversations with their children. And the most precious commodity we have on the planet is attention. So what we have to learn is that people just want to be seen. People just want to be heard. And when you hit jackpot and that customer emails you or walks through your front door or calls you on the phone, treat it like gold
Yeah.
because people are crying out for attention. And I learned this when I was 19. My uncle, who was my first mentor in real estate, he said, Daniel, you'll never listen yourself out of a sale. You'll never listen yourself out of a sale. And I would go in and I'd listen to their wants and needs and fears and frustrations. And they'd say, gee, you're a nice guy, Daniel. And I'd say, keep talking.
Yeah.
And then they just want to sign the contract. And it's attention. That's what people really want.
Yeah.
I've been promising my wife a Hermes handbag for 13 years. But she gets me every day listening to her. And no one else can do it as good as me.
But just staying on that subject of listening, and you were talking about, working with, was it the Emirates airline? Like that hiring process, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, they're coming in over the next number of years now into a workplace environment, and they have completely different expectations to what millennials and generation, previous, whatever they were, baby boomers would have had as expectations. And it's important, especially when there's so much fighting over recruitment amongst businesses and competitors at the moment, that you for yourself in business get it right. You want to get the cream of the crop so your competitor doesn't. But what's the process that one should be thinking about as a leader in terms of hiring?
One of the big shifts that we've got to acknowledge is that the new generation is going to have up to 40 careers throughout their lifetime.
Wow.
And we've moved from lifelong employment to lifelong employability. So what we're looking for today is somebody who's employable, somebody who's constantly updating their knowledge, constantly updating their skill, constantly working on their attitude. And we've got to look at these individuals. And in this market, we've got to hire for attitude, and then we should train for skill. Because if you find somebody who's willing to work hard, who's willing to move outside of their comfort zone, who's willing to try new things, you can train them on anything. And you can do it fast. We've got to remember that to learn a business skill takes no longer than 20 hours per skill. That's it. Most business skills take about 20 hours to learn. And then you just stack those skills on top of each other. So we've got to find good people with the right attitude. And when I do hiring, there's one thing that I'm looking for. We have a look at a couple of different scientific methods, and we look at people's ability to think critically. And when we're looking at their critical thinking skills, there's one thing that shows up. Is this person trainable or not? If you're doing your research on the individual and using some scientific methods, and this person's not trainable, don't hire them. Don't hire them. Because it's been proven to me over the past 14 years that everybody who's untrainable will turn over in your business in the first 30, 60 or 90 days.
Yeah.
Look for people who are trainable.
But how do you find someone who has a good attitude and B, is trainable?
Well, the first thing is we've got to get our biases out of the way. And that's a huge thing. And in Australia and in America and in Europe, about 89% of hiring managers have biases. And so what happens is they go, oh, wow, Daniel, love his accent. He's going to fit in here. And they'll make a decision based on an accent. It could be your local Gaelic football team.
Yeah.
Oh, he supports the same team as me. He must be a good bloke. Let's hire him. And 89% of hiring managers admit to that. And this is the illusion. And so what happens is because they're just doing it on intuition, they make a lot of mistakes. They say that if you put 2 women and 1 man in a job interview, it's a 76% higher chance that the woman will be employed over the man because of this sexism bias. If we're not seen to be hiring women, then we might be called sexist.
Yeah.
And so even if the man is better, all things considered, they'll still hire the woman. And that's a bias.
Yeah.
The other fascinating thing is that when it comes to the bias, 5% of hiring managers will admit to making a hiring decision in the first 60 seconds of meeting somebody. 60 seconds. So the point that I want to make is we've got to hire slow and we've got to fire fast.
Mm.
And we've got to know the numbers. In today's market, you're going to have to look through about 250 applications to find 15 suitable people. Out of those 15, 3 will be exactly what you're looking for. And then when you find your one person and you give them an offer, you've got a 50% chance of getting that person. And that's the fact. So it takes about 100 hours. But if you rush that process, you'll just get the wrong people. And 66% of people won't fit your culture. So you've got to slow it right down. You've got to figure out what's my target. You've got to start with the question, what does superior performance look like? Superior performance, you've got to say, if I was going to build a robot to do this role, how would they approach problems? How would they approach people? How would they handle the pace of the environment? How would they handle policy? Now, if you can build a template of what superior performance looks like, it's been proven that those superior performers produce 800% more results than the low performers. I personally work with a gentleman at the moment. He is a high performer. He's going to write $2.5 million in fees this year, and the average person in his area is struggling to write 250. Same product, same service, same area. He's just a template of high performer. And if you start the hiring process with saying, this is exactly what we're looking for, that's the bullseye.
Yeah.
And we're just going to aim for that.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you're just 1 degree off course, you're going to miss the bullseye every single time.
Yeah, true.
It's like when I came to Ireland for the first time. I looked in this magazine called T&T magazine, and it said, come and work on a dairy farm in Limerick City. And I rang the guy up and said, I'm looking for the job. And he said, come and start straight away. And I flew out of Heathrow. I landed into Limerick. I waited at the pub for about 4 hours. And then he showed up and he had about 3 teeth in his mouth. And he said, come on, hop in the car. And he took me off to the dairy farm. And then that night I thought he was going to eat me and peel my skin off. And I ran away the next day. I didn't even last a day because he didn't even qualify me. He just said, well, if this guy wants to work on a dairy farm, he must be good. But all of that effort, all of that time that I wasted, the poor guy.
Yeah.
And then I shot off down to Cork and Killarney and Waterford. I was supposed to be working.
Well, dairy farming is hard work, so you probably made a good choice there.
Yeah, and I think I got out alive.
Yeah.
So it's just going through the process a little bit slower. And then once you do find the right person, you've got to onboard them into the business really well. When I joined Emirates Airline, the process was magnificent. They ring me up and said, Daniel, congratulations, you've got the job. Check your email. There's your ticket. Get to the airport at this time. You're going to meet this person. You're going to fly from Sydney to Dubai. You're going to land in Dubai. Somebody's going to hold a sign that says Marhaba, which is welcome. Then we're going to take you to head office. They're going to put money in your hand. They're going to give you keys to a hotel room. They're going to give you your uniform and a month's salary in advance.
Wow.
Once you do that, day one, you're going to start to train. You're going to do this for 6 weeks, and this is your career progression. And everything they told me happened. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And I wanted to stay.
Mm-hmm.
I was so committed to the company. And they've shown that most decisions to leave a business occur in the first 24 hours.
Wow.
Somebody gets onboarded and they're paired up with a buddy. The person who they pair up is the worst performer. The person who hates the company the most toxic person, and says, hey, let me tell you how things work around here. And they go, oh! I had it the other day. One person was hired, boss came in and wasn't prepared for the onboarding and made a comment about what the new generation was wearing. Criticized his clothes. The guy left immediately. that position had been vacant for 100 days. That position's going to be vacant for another 100 days because he was criticized about what he was wearing.
Yeah.
But no one prepared him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with this new generation, we've just got to prepare them.
Yeah.
We've got to set the expectation. We've got to tell them how it really is around here. But we should also give them a game plan moving forward. This is what's going to happen on day one. This is how we're going to educate you, train you. These are your entitlements. We're going to fulfill our promises. And if you do that, commitment to the company goes up 1,800%. And if you can do that in your business, you don't have to worry about high turnover.
Mm-hmm.
And all high turnover businesses are low profit. And the reason why they're low profit is the hiring process is so expensive. If you hire somebody and you lose them quickly, that hiring cost is 3 to 5 times their annual salary. So if you're going to pay somebody 50,000 euros and the company screws it up, the cost to the company is a $250,000 cost. And if that seat's been vacant for 6 months, there's been no productivity.
Yeah.
It's been your 100 hours looking through 250 resumes.
Yeah.
And then it damages your reputation. All of the time, all of the cost involved to get that person on board is a sunk cost.
Yeah.
And there's not one profit and loss statement in the world that measures the cost of bad hires.
Yeah. True.
But if you start it on there, we would say, whoa, we as the business have to get it right. Some of the things we do, we've seen a decrease in the risk of a bad hire by up to 93%. All turnover virtually stops. And then they build the winning team. You don't have to have 30 people on your team. If you get the high performers, you just need 5 good people.
Yeah. One thing I want to touch on before we finish up is you were working with 200 leaders recently. I think you did 600 studies. And it was to see what makes them all different, what makes one leader different from another and so on. But there was one key thing that they all had in common, which I thought was fascinating. Talk to me about that.
We have a piece of technology. It's called vocal biomarker technology. And what we're measuring is the brainwave frequency inside of people's voice. And in a 90-second clip of their voice, we can understand what makes them stressed. We can understand their personality type, what they want, what they need to get and stay motivated. We can also have a look at the energy levels in the body. And there was one thing that when we performed these 600 case studies on 200 leaders, the one thing that was in common with all of them was they lacked confidence. They didn't have enough willpower to pursue their hopes, their dreams, and their wishes. They were all incredibly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
They were all incredibly well educated. They were subject matter experts. They just didn't have the guts to go for it. And I believe that if we all just get the confidence, if we just have the guts to go for it, if we just take one step out of our comfort zone every single day, everything will be okay. And I've done the research. Most millionaires are low IQ people. And the reason that they're successful is they don't overthink it. They're a little bit stupid. And what we say is that ignorance is bliss. They don't overthink it.
Yeah.
They don't let their intelligence get in their way. They just put their back into it. They have the guts and they go for it.
That's brilliant.
And that's the one discovery, was just the number one thing was confidence. And I believe that if anybody's listening to this today, if you ask yourself the question, if I had the confidence, if I had the guts to go after what I wanted, what would happen? And everybody knows what would happen. You would speak to more people, you'd have more conversations, you'd get the opportunity to present. You wouldn't care about people taking advantage of you because you'd have the confidence to bounce back.
Mm.
You wouldn't care about rejection because you know your worth. You know what you're good at. You wouldn't care about the comfort zone. You'd say, this comfort zone sucks because everything that I want is outside of the comfort zone. And then you'd say, you know what? I don't care about making a mistake. If I make a mistake, so what? I'll learn from it and I'll course correct.
Yeah.
And if we just have the guts and the confidence, everything starts to come together.
Brilliant.
And that's the one thing we discovered. And every person we spoke to, they said, Daniel, Ninny, That's 100% what's holding me back. I'm my biggest enemy. Everybody else, I had a lady say it to me the other day. She says, people tell me all the time, my product and service is going to change lives. But the problem was, she just didn't have the confidence to act on it. That's it.
Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. If people want to get more information, head over to the website, danieltolson.com, and you can also do that 90-second test on yourself and see the results that you get. I could talk to you for hours, there's no doubt about it, but I just hope that people just pause and listen to all the brilliant anecdotes and stories and tips you gave in this episode, because there's so much value that they can get out of it. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.